Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Supermom Entrepreneur and our amazing webinar tonight with Tanya, Chernova, the essentials of high impact speaking. We are so excited to have you with us. Again, my name is Carolyn Dickinson. I'm a coach, speaker, trainer, the founder of Supermom Entrepreneur, and the co-producer of I Am the Boss events. We're so excited to have you with us tonight, and we're going to be sharing with you some amazing information on how to create a very powerful talk for yourselves. You know, Tanya is such a phenomenal speaker. I've heard her speak so many times, and we're so excited to have her. Tanya Chernova is known as the voice and inspiration of empowerment of millions of people. As a celebrated speaker, author, and business coach, using her guiding principles, know your power, live your purpose, and fuel your passion. I have heard Tanya speak. I've heard her present. Absolutely amazing. Her education in business and psychology and her fluency in English, French, and Russian. Tanya has traveled to over 40 countries and an innovative corporate educator to some of the world's biggest brands such as L'Oreal, Professional, Polyconcept, Cisco, Hennessy, and NASA, working with savvy business leaders seeking to sharpen the edge and reinvent their culture. Tanya transforms companies and people with the mindset, skill set, and systems to succeed. Tanya is a professional speaker, coach, co-author of Undermined. And Tanya, we're so excited to have you here, knowing you're also the Canadian top 100 most powerful women for 2013. Tanya Chernova, welcome to Supermom Entrepreneur webinar.
Thank you so much for having me on, Carolyn. I really appreciate it. That introduction was a big mouthful, I know. Every single year the list gets longer of what has to be said before I'm finally allowed on stage, so I figure I'm in the background. Good thing I've got anti-aging cream on.
Well, honey, you don't need it. You're absolutely gorgeous.
Okay, so I'm really grateful to be with everyone tonight because public speaking is definitely one of my most favorite things in the whole wide world. You know, people have a passion for cooking, and they can't wait to get in the kitchen and cook up some of their favorite recipes, and it's very similar to creating a talk. It's one of my favorite things to cook up, and tonight I'm really excited to share the recipe for success for people who want to be influential, people who want to feel like they can step into their power, which really means speaking from a place of their purpose and transmitting everything that they have to say with a sense of passion that vibrates in a way that really gets people moving into action. And, you know, we only have an hour together, so of course there's so much to be said around really creating, you know, your signature talk and delivering it in a way that makes people do what you want them to, which is, you know, change their lives using the methods that you have, or, you know, whatever it is that people want to communicate. But ultimately, you know, tonight our purpose is to just get down the fundamentals because, you know, public speaking more than anything is really a skill. And it's interesting because for the 20 years that I've been speaking, and I've always had a passion, you know, for it. And ever since I was a little girl, my mother would take me to, you know, this women's conference or a seminar, and I'd always see the speaker up on stage, and I'd think, gosh, I just, you know, I was so enamored by them. I just thought, wow, like they're up there. And it didn't really matter that I connected with what they said, just their ability to be able to create some form of energy and capture everyone's attention and make people laugh, like really struck me as something amazing. And when I was in university, I actually discovered for the very first time that I had zero skills in public speaking because many of us have the will. And I think, Carolyn, you'll agree with me that a lot of people, you know, especially tonight listening on this, you really are experts in your field, you know, or you are passionate about something important and you really want to influence people and help people find some sort of, you know, way to a better life or whatever it is that, you know, you're wanting to share with them. But the problem is that once you actually get in front of people, you sometimes discover that you actually can't string the words together. And there's nothing more frustrating than having something to say and not having the ability to communicate it, or leaving a talk thinking, oh my gosh, like I could have done that so much better, or I should have said this in the moment. So when I was in university, I was actually, you know, a pioneer at the time because I was in a very left-wing university in Winnipeg, where it's very, very cold, lots of 9 months of winter. And I pioneered the business center there, and it was very a left-wing university. Anyway, I had 162 people sign up for my very first speech, and I knew exactly what I wanted to say, and I knew exactly where I wanted to lead them, and I knew exactly the vision that I had, and I got up on the podium, and I looked out into the audience, and the light shone in my face, and I froze. And when I opened my mouth, powder felt like it came out of it, and my knees got weak, and my head started to sweat. Like I just couldn't understand why, when I was so clear at home, could I not get up there and actually say anything. So it became a really big commitment of mine to actually get out there and get the true skills. And so other people, you know, that are on the stages of today are potentially very talented and they have this natural skill. But because I've actually had to hone my skill and teach it to others for so many years, there really is actually a recipe for it. So even people who are the least savvy public speakers or the people that have the greatest fear getting up there, rest assured you truly can become extraordinary in your capacity to communicate your message. And the key behind that is really connecting to the purpose behind what you're really trying to say and why you're up there in the first place. And when people ask, you know, how did you become a speaker? Like, how do you get up there and actually decide, okay, this is the profession you're going to do? And the reality is any person who has a message to share, a burning desire to really communicate something important to other people, is automatically given the right to be a speaker. That's all you really need to do, is you have to have a message and you have to have the capacity to be able to get up there and do it. And in the olden days, we'd see a lot of those English movies where people would stand up literally on a soapbox and just yell to people on the street to really pass this message along and influence other people. And the reason that we speak in the first place, you know, the reason that we actually even speak, whether you're on a stage or you're in a one-on-one conversation, it's exactly the same type of principle, to be honest with you. But the reason that we speak with other people is, you know, first and foremost, to share our thoughts and our feelings and what our messages and what our perspectives are. But most importantly, I think when people are up there wanting to speak, they really want to influence another person to at least give them the opportunity to see things in a different way. And when we see things in a different way, it gives us a chance to act in a different way. And those people who have this, you know, backdoor mission to make the world a better place really think that if I can just impart my message, people will become healthier, they'll become wealthier, they'll become happier. Whatever it is, they'll become something more than what they have already, and then the world by then will actually become a better place. So I really acknowledge each and every one of you that's listening tonight, that if you're committed to listening and understanding what the skills are behind public speaking, it's because somewhere within you, you have the purpose of really making a difference in this world. And I truly acknowledge you for that, because it takes courage to do that. It takes courage and love to do that. So you're really appreciated. So I don't know if we can actually pull up the next slide, Carolyn, if we can start the...
It's done. Can you see it?
I actually still see my own bio. Is there something I should be doing?
No, it should show for you. Can everybody else? Jody, can you see it?
Am I still muted?
Can you see the screen, Jody?
Yeah, I can see the screen.
Okay.
What
I'm
am I
muting.
saying?
I'm muting you back. Tanya, are you able to see the screen?
I see the screen, but it still says my bio. It's okay, because I can follow along the presentation slides that I've created.
Okay, let me know when you want me to switch, sweetheart. And but they're up, and everybody else can see your slides.
Oh, isn't that advantageous that all of you can see it and I cannot?
That's so bizarre. I'm not sure why. It should be changing as I change them.
It's okay. Just tell me what you see on the screen.
It's the essentials of confidence. Sorry, I can't.
Okay, flip it over. No problem.
Poised and powerful presentation. You want me to flip to the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay, 5 types of presentation.
Okay, we're both on the same page, so I'm going to use my computer, like what I sent you earlier, and you can just see the screen. No problem.
Okay, let me know when you want me to shift.
My pleasure. You're all going to be my eyes this evening, okay? So essentially what I wanted to share with you in terms of creating your talk, because tonight I want to definitely make sure that you walk away with the value, with a lot of value and some insight in terms of how speaking is really divided, because there are, in effect, actually 5 types of presentations, and most people don't realize that. And it's important to know because when you're thinking of crafting a talk, or when you're thinking, I mean, really, I want you to apply it not just in thinking, how can I create this, or how can I use this information to craft my signature talk, but this is also about understanding that every time you speak one-on-one or with a small group or with a larger group, you're always sharing your message. So if you choose from this moment to say, you know what, I'm an expert, but I'm also a speaker. So one of the taglines I have, in the course is turning experts into speakers. And I tell people, you don't have to wait to have an audience of 2,000 people. It's good to practice one-on-one and start moving from there. And understanding that there's actually 5 types of presentations helps you in any audience become really powerful, because each and every one of those presentations is grounded in a specific type of intention. And when you understand what each of these presentations is supposed to do, it makes it so much easier to evaluate whether or not you actually achieved your goal. So, for example, so that you see the slide in front of you, there are 5 types of presentations: informative, demonstration, persuasive, ceremonial, and impromptu. So I'll give you some examples. So essentially in the informative, I'm sure that you can all think of, normally if this was a class that we'd be together, we would be in dialogue back and forth, okay? But in an informative presentation, what would you say the goal or the outcome would be if you were to do an informative presentation? Think about that for just a minute. So normally when we have an informative presentation, go ahead. Carolyn, did you want to?
I'm here.
Okay. Did you want to say, so when we'll dialogue this back and forth so that,
Sure.
we can make it a living thing for the people on the phone. So you'll be our representative of the audience, okay? So if I say to you, Carolyn, if you're doing an informative presentation, what would be an example, do you think? I mean, you coach so many people. What kind of an informative presentation do you think you'd make?
It could be a variety of things. For me, informative it could be teaching them some information about a particular topic. It could be informing them of my story and the lesson behind that, just as a couple of examples.
Yeah, perfect. So information, right, when people come in for an informative talk, it really is that. The goal of information is so that people know at the end, the outcome for it is that they walk away with a combination of awareness, like something that they now know that they didn't know before, or even beyond awareness, like really knowledge. Now they get it. So if people were going to be coming in, for example, to understand how to take care of their aging parents and what the transition process is from, a larger house to a smaller home, for example. So they would be informed. It would be really something that they would need. So they would have steps. They would be given an understanding of what the different aspects are of the entire transition, anything that has to do with awareness and knowledge. So if you ask yourself, we're here to give an informative talk, at the end, we have to know it that our audience has walked away knowing something, or at least being aware. And it's important that we actually understand the outcomes, because just like you see that I'm doing with Carolyn here, rather than giving a presentation, the old way of giving a presentation was very much a monologue. And in today's world, people want to be engaged, so you have to turn your monologue and shift it into dialogue, because really when you're making a presentation, it's just a larger conversation than you would have one-on-one, but you can have it with 20, 10,000 people, right? So when you're looking at an informative talk, it's really important that at the end you ask your audience, so what do you now know that you didn't know before, or what have you learned? And then if people give you feedback that they've really gotten something, then you know you've been successful. That's the way we evaluate, because it's important to evaluate your presentations. And before you have your conclusion, that you really understand that your audience has gotten what they needed. In the second presentation is demonstration. So in demonstration, what do you think the goal or the outcome is for that?
Well, demonstration could be a variety of things. In most cases, it's either a product, a service, something that would support you in your business or something that you're doing. So you're demonstrating how it would work, how it would be of service to you as the consumer or my audience, and showing them what it would look like.
Perfect. So the key word there is exactly what you said, Carolyn. It's how. The question is, in a demonstration, you're really showing people how to. And it's important because at that point, you need to have a variety of tools and options in front of you. So if you're cooking, you're doing how to. If you're fixing or screwing in a light bulb, you're doing how to. If you're doing a technical seminar, it's how to. And so it's really important that you have an understanding of the materials that you're presenting and it really helping your audience move along so that by the end of it, you also give them an opportunity to try it for themselves. And you'll know that you have achieved it because in the end, they can, in fact, do some part of the demonstration on their own. Obviously, practice makes perfect, but at least if nothing else, they've mastered the steps of it. And in our larger, if we had more time, I would go into the principles of adult learning education because what some people don't realize is that adults learn very differently from that of which we did when we were adolescents. And it's key that we actually keep in mind when we're doing demonstrations that there's a way of organizing the information so that the human brain, the adult brain, can organize it in their mind to recall it later without having to look at their notes. And that's really important. And it's a technique called anchoring. But most importantly, at the end of it, you want to know that people have walked away with the sense of how to. The third type of presentation is persuasive. So what do you think the end outcome is of persuasion?
Now, I had to actually think about this. So, I mean, persuasion is usually trying to, I don't like the word convince, but convince someone to either work with you, to use your company for a service that they need in some way or form.
Exactly, exactly. And so the outcome of persuasion, right, so those are some good examples. The outcome of persuasion is that your audience is taking action. You have persuaded them. They are convinced. They've bought in. So a lot of sales seminars or something when you're selling, whether you're giving an informative talk or you're giving a demonstration, for example, at the end, if you're selling something or if you want your audience to take action and do something they've never done before or do something that they don't usually do or take greater action, like let's say we were in a health seminar, for example, and you were talking to me about the benefit of vitamins or the benefit of exercise. Many of us know already what the foundational benefit of exercise and vitamins are, but now we're really persuaded that we're actually going to make a change in our lives, and starting tomorrow or even tonight, we're going to do things differently. And so persuasion is such an important part of it. So the fourth one is ceremonial, and most people don't realize how this works because the ceremonial is actually an example of that is like a wedding or giving an award. And the outcome of the ceremonial one is that people have a sense of meaning in what's actually happening, a sense of meaning. So what's key is that when you're giving a ceremonial talk, and sometimes we're introducing another person, like Carolyn introduced me, or we're at I've had to give speeches at weddings before, or if someone stands up and actually has a thank you speech, like some of you are going to have to stand up and accept, some form of recognition and say thank you. And the key to that is actually meaning. So how would you say something or craft your talk where in the end, people in the whole entire room felt like there was a greater sense of meaning than before they started? So what's key about that is that oftentimes when we're in front of an audience, there's part of your participants that want to be there and they're keeners and they know exactly what they're there for, and then there's a part of the audience that has no idea what they're there for. They're basically prisoners. And if you're at a wedding, I'm sure everyone's been there before, where you're literally the date. You don't even know the bride and groom. You have no idea what's happening. And so how can you as a powerful presenter stand up and say what you need to say in a way that creates this inspiring sense of meaning for everyone in the room, where it really unites them? And that's a really key part of presentations too, because when you're up there and actually presenting, whether again you're in a conversation of one or in a conversation of two and 5 more people join you, or you're on a stage, one of your key elements is that you have to have the capacity to truly bring everyone together so that they feel included in it. And ceremonial is, of course, that place of meaning. It's really special. And finally, impromptu. Impromptu is when you're literally making an introduction, or if you have to make a toast, right? Have you ever had to make a toast, Carolyn?
Yes, and I've sometimes been pulled at last minute saying, oh, can you make a quick toast for us? That's always fun.
Yeah, and it's stressful, right? I mean, I think that anyone listening has at one point had somebody elbow them and say, you should stand up and make a toast, and, you know, you immediately draw this blank. You're like, let's toast. How about we just say cheers in a different language? You know, like it's really awkward, you know, because it's hard to do things on the spot. And I think that that's why it's really important to know these 5 types of presentations, because if you actually understand the outcome of each, then it makes it clear for you when you go in and you can work from a place of intention, right? So in the impromptu, what do you think the outcome is?
I would think very similar, depending on what situation that you're in, and making that toast is also to, you know, bring that feeling at the end of it, to bring people connected. If it's a toast, you know, if you're at a ceremony and they say, can you jump up and say something? So I think an impromptu could depend on which situation that you're in.
Right, and so it depends on which situation you're in, but I want you to know, and everyone listening, that no matter what, whenever you're giving an impromptu speech, the important part of it, the outcome, is connection. So if I'm introducing someone, for example, as a way of creating an impromptu connection, the key is that in the end, the 2 people that I'm introducing feel connected. Now, I want everyone to really get grounded and get truly clear on the intentions of each of these things, because if I'm actually doing an introduction, oftentimes I've been introduced to people where people say, for example, so please meet so-and-so, and that's it. They just leave them hanging, and you think, okay. You know, but what's key is you have to introduce people in such a way where you can actually leave them in a space of connection. So you might mention that one person has an expertise in something that the other person might have an interest in, you know, or that they both come from the same hometown. Or if you're doing a toast, then you want to create some sort of connection where you either tell a story or give some sort of information about the other person where everyone can relate, so that in the end we all agree and we can all cheers to the same thing, right? And there's some fundamental things that everyone can agree on, like gratitude, or, you know, how great the meal is, or how great the hosts are, etc. Okay, so tell me what you think you got. Like, what do you think the benefit is, if anyone wants to raise their hand? What is the benefit for you to know what the 5 types of presentations are?
Now, anyone listening, you can either raise your hand, or if you have technical difficulties, you can send me a question and I can ask it on your behalf.
So, Carolyn, why don't you just talk on behalf of our audience for now, and just let us know, what do you think, you know, I mean, how has it helped you to know that there's 5 types of presentations?
Someone wrote, I think, as you mentioned, it's to set your intention.
Great. And that's really important, because when you're thinking about it, your intention is the greatest, you know, is the greatest starting point, because when you're about to go on or have a conversation, the key is, what is my intention? So before we end this call, before it's complete, I'm going to give you the 5-step formula for actually crafting your talk. But the first one is, of course, understanding what is my intention. So if you want to just hit to the next slide.
We are there.
Awesome. Does it say what comes first, an emotion or a thought?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay, so what do you think? So now that we have our types of presentations and we're about to influence our audience, okay, what do you think comes first, an emotion or a thought?
Are you asking me this question?
Sure. I mean, because you see, I'm practicing. The reality is that even though I'm doing a presentation, I'm practicing the art of dialogue, because ultimately, if I'm in a state of monologue, then your mind is in a state of passive reception. But if we're practicing the art of dialogue, even if you ask, and I want everyone to understand how to model this behavior, even if you're in a space where your audience can't talk back to you, you want to be able to position and transition. See how we transition to the next slide? You know, in traditional seminars, people say, okay, well, now that we know the 5 steps of a presentation, or the 5 different types, now we're going to talk about this, and now we're going to talk about that. when we present things in that way, the human mind really disconnects. But if we want to keep people engaged and if we want to keep people connected, how we create smooth transitions is a way of creating dialogue and asking a question. So if any of us remember in school where we would zone out because our teacher was like, well, wah, 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 at the front of the room, all of a sudden you hear your name and the question is being asked, you're like, okay, and now you're clicked back in. And so for those of us who do, because I do 8- and 10-hour seminars, so for those of us who do talks that last a really long time, the key to making these really effective transitions is to actually ask a question. But I'm authentically asking you the question, what do you think comes first, an emotion or a thought?
I think in most cases it's a thought.
Amazing that you know that answer, right? So I would say that most of the time when I ask that question, I would say seriously 78% of my audience usually says an emotion. And if you ask that same thought, most people would think an emotion comes first because it's something that's so obvious to people. They really know when they feel angry or sad or happy or excited or, enthusiastic or frustrated. But most people don't realize that what's driving an emotion is a thought. And so when we talk about, the 5 types of presentations, I want you to know that even if you're doing something that's information-driven, like informative, or demonstration, or ceremonial, or impromptu, underneath it all, each and every single one of us that wants to create an impactful influence, we have to understand how to create that sense of persuasion. We have to know how to create that sense of urgency so that people, despite what they're listening to, despite what their inner thoughts are at least willing to contemplate what we're saying, and they're driven towards making some form of change in their behavior. Would you agree?
I agree.
Yeah.
I want to say Dan is also agreeing with us on here. She's been mentioning too. She actually said thought as well before you actually gave the answer.
Oh, good job. Good job. You guys are so savvy. So if you want to flip to the next slide, you'll see that there's like a brain that has a particular model, the cognitive behavioral model.
Very cool.
Exactly. So what's important for us, and I tell you honestly, even if this is the only thing you take away from this session, just this model, this is such an important model because you live your life through what I call the circle of influence. And the circle of influence is such a key part of how we create our talks because of the following. So if we want to be persuasive, then we think to ourselves, okay, first of all, understanding the circle of influence. If we want to be persuasive, which access, like so when we look at thought, emotion, action, result, right? If we want to be persuasive, what are we trying to influence?
Sorry, I had a little technical difficulty. I apologize. Ask that question again.
So if we want to be persuasive in that little circle where you see thought, emotion, action, result, what are you trying to influence?
I would think, in my opinion, it would be first the thought, and then it would go to the emotion.
Right. Good. You know what it is that when you're trying to influence, you have to ask yourself, first of all, what result do I want to create? Because if you want people to take action, you as the speaker must know what action do you want them to take. So in that particular model, you want to start off by asking yourself, before you start, presenting thoughts, what is the result I want my audience to take, or what is the result I want people to take? So for example, if somebody potentially in your audience was, are they coaches, or who's on the line? Who do we have?
Well, we have all kinds of people. There's entrepreneurs, coaches.
Okay, so let's say people were a coach. Okay, so it's very simple. Okay, so because this could be applied to truly anything, like even if you're a fitness instructor or whatever it is. Okay, so if you were a coach and you were about to speak to people about goal setting and the importance of having a coach, etc., before you start talking about anything at all, you begin your talk with the end in mind, and you ask yourself, before I start speaking, what result do I want my audience to take? And normally you would probably think to yourself, I would like them to sign up to coaching. And then you want to write down all of the results that you want them to have. So you might want to say, I want them to sign up, or I want them to know the importance of it, I want them to understand the benefit of it. I want them to go home and refer me to other people. I want them to maybe perhaps buy my book. You know, whatever it is, I want everyone to consider that before you go out and say anything, even if you're going to a party, let's say you're going to a party and you're a single person looking for, you know, the person of your dreams, you know, you ask yourself, or you're just going to a party to, you know, get out because you've had a really long week. It's the same thing. Before you leave your house, you ask yourself, you know, what is the outcome? Like, what do I want to create? Or let's say it's a networking event. Most of the time what people don't realize is that there's a little voice inside our head that's constantly distracting us with a whole bunch of inner chatter. So if we were going out on stage, that inner chatter would be like, oh, I can't believe I booked this. This was so ridiculous. I'm not ready for it. Or I hope the people that are there are receptive. You know, there's a whole bunch of that nonsensical inner chatter that's really distracting. Or if people are going to a party, you think to yourself, I have nothing to wear, or I hope the people there are going to be of value. Last time I went to one of these things, it was so boring. Does that sound familiar?
Absolutely. I get that chatter all the time.
Right, and it's the same thing for your audience. Your audience has inside that chatter because you're about to step on stage and they're saying to themselves, whether they like it or not, oh, I hope this isn't going to be some cheesy thing. I hope this isn't going to be like the last person I saw. I hope this isn't going to be long, or did I put enough parking money in my car? You know, like that's the problem, right, is that each one of us is extremely disconnected because we come in with our own set of inner chatter. And so as the presenter, what's important is that you get super grounded in the result you want to create, and you walk out with that result, and you actually use that intention in the introduction of your talk. So it's one of the biggest sort of secrets that you can, you know, use, because if you're doing something that's informative or demonstration or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. The point is you want to plant the seeds of the result that you want them to get very transparently, you know, in the beginning of your talk, even if it's, because, you know, people know right away when you're being inauthentic, honestly, right? People know right away when they're all of a sudden being sold, you know, in a manipulative kind of way. So if you come out and you actually say, you know, the goal of tonight, or just, I mean, and I'll show you later on that there's a few different ways to open up a presentation. But, you know, one of them is just simply direct by saying, you know, I'm so excited to be here. You know, our goal tonight is to get to know more about coaching and how it works, you know, or get to know more about public speaking and the different skills that are required. And, you know, my goal at the end of it is that you'll feel so excited about the prospect of coaching in your life that you'll want to sign up, because you'll know that this is something that's going to really help you break through those barriers and achieve the life of your dreams. See, I mean, it's transparent, it's exciting, they're prepared, they know exactly why they're there, you've told them your intention, and everything you do from there onward will help them move towards that journey so that in the end they'll understand, you know, that they've gotten there, because they'll either feel excited about joining or not. Does that make sense to you?
Makes complete sense. I'm vigorously writing notes like I'm sure everybody is on them.
Yes, it's amazing, because if you want to be persuasive, even if you're informative, and it's the same thing, demonstration. So even if you're doing a demonstration, you ask yourself, okay, so what's the result? I want people to be able to make 3 different kinds of cannelloni with this kind of sauce, so that, you know, whenever you get out there, you basically just tell people exactly the result you want to create, because you're all on this journey together. And then you move into that process. So first you decide the result that you want to create. Then you move into the different collection of thoughts that you need to, you know, say, like the different words, the language collection, the stream of language. And you need to ask yourself, okay, what is the nature of my language? Because a lot of people say things, but they don't create action. Like, for example, we say things to ourselves all the time. So, I don't know, have you ever made a list of things to do and then not done them?
Always. They're always being transferred over the next day.
Right. So I think each and every one of us has, like, even told ourselves, you know, I have to do this today, and then the end of the day comes and we don't do it. Okay, so, I mean, there's different aspects of self-sabotage, and the Undermined book, like if you all have some form of issue around self-sabotage that you want to break through, you know, that book is great in terms of subconscious self-sabotage. But when you're talking about moving an audience to action, it's actually a lot simpler, because, you know, for them, they need thoughts to be driven by emotion. Right? But for us, like we'll say, for example, I'm not going to eat that cake. Okay, I'm going to this party. I'm not going to drink. Okay, okay, I'm going to the mall, I'm only going to buy this one thing. And how many times do we say with great, passion to ourselves to do one thing or another, and we don't listen? So how can we say something to somebody else and expect them to take action? So ultimately, what's important for us to understand is that just because we say something or give them this information, like some of us have been confused, for example, because we're so passionate about our product or service that we think, gosh, if they only saw it or knew it or smelt it or tasted it or understood it, they would want it too. And we leave whatever presentation we've done fully dumbfounded that people are like still in this space of like, oh, I have to think about it. You're like, what is there to think about? This is amazing. You know what I mean? And it's just like what's important for us to understand as presenters is that just because you give a collection of words does not lead to action automatically. And the reason is because if you look at this circle of influence, you can't skip steps. The thoughts you have to generate outside of your mouth and into the listening space of your audience has to be driven by emotion. And if you look inside the word emotion, there's another word in there. Can you see the second word?
Motion.
Motion, exactly. Because the way we feel drives our actions. And if we say thoughts that are not appealing to the emotions of our audience, do not expect action. So I'm going to say that again. We can say whatever we feel we have to say, but if our words are not connecting in a way or stimulating the buying desire or the receiving desire of our audience by being emotionally engaging, action will not follow. They will simply listen to you with that sort of blank stare, potentially some appreciation, but we will not get our result. So when you're crafting your talk, you have to ask yourself, what result do I want to create? And then secondarily, what emotions do they have to feel in order for me to get to this result? So and when we expand into our larger full-day class, because I just don't have, 7:40, I want to make sure that I cover all the other points, but because there's so much in every aspect of this, I want to share with you that there's actually only 5 drivers, which means that there's only 5 emotional drivers, the key drivers that make people do anything or buy anything. And then we go into each one of them and how you craft your talk around each one. It's actually pretty fascinating. But ultimately what happens is that so let's review. So when you're about to go into a talk, whether it's one-on-one or, in a larger audience, you ask yourself first, not what am I going to say, which is the common thing. We ask ourselves, what result do I want to create? And then you ask yourself, how do I want people to feel? And then you start thinking, okay, what are the collection of thoughts I have to impart in order for them to feel a certain way? And then take action. And that's why some presentations are not just words, but they're influenced by music or demonstration, like actual props, where you could come out in a costume. Like one of the fun things I used to do when I was as a presenter, depending on who my audience was, I remember one time I was running my own, I have Courageous Living, which is a women's empowerment company, and we had Diva Day, which was helping women, enrich every aspect of their life. And my presentation was how to say no without creating guilt or resentment. And it's hard for women to say no. I mean, everyone knows it. So essentially, unless you get older, then you get really good at it. But anyway, realistically, what I did was I thought to myself, how can I get, and a lot of that no conversation was around the understanding that we need to really embrace our worth, because oftentimes when we say yes to others, we say no to ourselves. I know that you have all heard this before. Okay, but what I thought was, how can I do it in an impactful way where I don't have to sit there saying wah, wah, wah? Because if you're telling your audience stuff that they already know, hoping that they'll get it again for the very first time, you need, like everyone knows we should exercise and eat better. I mean, this is no secret. Like if you're selling that, you gotta do it in a way that has the element of surprise and stimulates their emotions, right? So I came out, I went to the costume place, and I rented this very elaborate princess costume. I mean, this thing I think weighed like 42 pounds. It was absurd. It had like petty skirts and underneath skirts and this massive giant cap with this huge veil. I was like such a surprising spectacle that people were just shocked into realizing that you need to see yourself genuinely as a princess or a queen or a person of value. So it added that element of surprise. So I know that, not every one of you needs to go out and rent a costume, but even if you have a small prop, like, that adds something so that people get emotionally stimulated, whether it's curiosity or whatever. And then you have to really, in your talk, beautiful leaders, you have to say to yourself, okay, what do I need to do to help them take action? So if you know the result you want them to take, and you're hitting on those emotional points with a collection of thoughts that's really purpose-driven and meaningful and creating that sense of, understanding for people, then you need to help them create a plan of action. Because if you want them to do things differently before they leave, they need to already be able to know what their first or second or third step is so that they can actually take it towards the result you want them to do. So for example, because clarity is the key, right? So ultimately, if you want the result, if you want the result for them to be, to buy a coaching package or to be able to make cannelloni, then, you have to emotionally get them in that space where they're really excited about it, or they realize that if they don't do it, something horrible will happen, like that's the way we sell insurance. So your collection of thoughts is there, and then you share with them. So the first step for you to do this in your life is 1, 2, 3. And it's important because we're going to come now to the next element of, how to really be an influential and impactful speaker, is that if you help people create this plan of action, first of all, it leads them to the result, but most importantly, it helps them, create a sense of vision. So if we can flip the next slide. Actually, before we get on to the next topic, can I just ask you what you got from this conversation, the circle of influence?
Well, this has actually been great because I'm actually going to be doing a talk for Royal Bank coming up. So I've been literally massaging my own talk, and a lot of people have been asking me about their talks. So this has really provided me with even more insight about how my wording needs to occur. I really like the thought process of the transparency. I am all about that, so that just made it even easier for me because I love being able to just, let people know where we're at. And the aspect of really taking that thought into emotion and implementing it into your talk and the way you word your conversation with people is something I've always paid attention to, but you brought an even clearer, sorry, this doesn't sound right, but clearer clarity to exactly how to set that up powerfully and in a way that can really create some massive results in the conversation that you're having with your audience.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much for, for sharing that on behalf of everyone in the audience, because clarity, and this is our next topic of conversation, clarity is the key, obviously, right? Because people listening to you, if it starts to get unclear, then they lose their way. They start to disconnect from you. And so if we can get to the next slide, I don't know, after that, master the circle of influence, what have you got there?
I'm just going to one quick. Dana, you have a question here about music. I see you pop something in there. Is that like a question, or are you just making a comment here, Dana? I'm not seeing a response here. You know what, Dana? I'm going to unmute you for a quick second. Just ask your question. I don't want to... Dana? Can you hear us?
Hi. Yes. Hi, Carolyn. Thank you for, no, I'm really excited, and thank you so much for this, Tanya. This is so insightful. And Carolyn, thank you for signing me up. I'm elated right now because, you're practicing, and this is just adding to the theory, of how this works. So my question is with regards to the emotion. I mean, I know Tanya had mentioned the costume, which is really cool, and but I was wondering about using music, kind of like I love to dance, and it creates an incredible emotion for me, kind of like watching Ellen. Would that be an option?
Would that be an option? Can everyone hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? And that's Dana, right? You know what? Definitely. And you know, when you feel an inspired idea, like, oh, you know, I would love to have music, really listen to yourself, because you're creating the masterpiece of your own actual journey, and people are getting onto your journey bus, and you're taking them somewhere they've never been before. So if you want to create music, and if you want to give the element of dance, and even share that with your audience members, I really encourage each and every one of you, honestly, to just add that in. Whatever your personal flavor is and your style is, really don't be afraid to just go for it. And obviously the only thing, and we talked about this, you know, just a moment ago, is clarity. Like if you get up there and all of a sudden start dancing and you're not leading your people and they get lost while you're up there sort of singing your song, that's the only you know, caveat is that you have to make sure that wherever you go, you're taking your people with you. You don't want to leave anyone behind. And we look at presentations, like when you're giving a talk, very similar to being a tour guide. So imagine yourself showing up to a particular site, and you've got a collection of people, and you're about to go see the, you know, pyramids or something. I mean, you realize, like, you're fully responsible for these people. They're totally vulnerable. And your audience, like most speakers stand up there and they're terrified of being rejected, but the audience members are actually terrified of being rejected, because especially if it's something that requires participation and they raise their hand, you know, they want to know that they're safe. And when we have our larger class, like our full-day class, we talk about understanding how to create a safe space, so that if you want to introduce music, you know, or if you want to introduce costumes, you want to do everything in a way that gives your audience the opportunity to feel included and that they feel heightened by the experience. So if you're going to, for example, go on this trip with them and take them to see the pyramids, you literally have to pile people in a bus, let them know where you're going. As you're going, show them where they are, tell them great stories about it. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. And you don't ever want to go faster than the slowest person can keep up with you. And pacing is something that we talk about too, right? But definitely getting back to like adding your own flavor, just like if this was a cooking class and you would raise your hand and say, can I add different spices? Any master chef would say that the reason that you become a master chef is because you finally get to a space where you create your own recipe, and everything is founded in the, you know, basic skills. Just like painting or speaking or cooking, there's basic skills, which is what I'm showing you today, but these are really advanced basic skills, because not a lot of people realize that phenomenal, you know, presentations are founded in these formulas, right? But afterwards, add your own thing, whatever your inspiration calls upon you. And the only other thing is, don't make it too confusing. Like if you're going to do music, you know, do music, but then don't do music as well as, you know, 4 other things, because then it starts to detract from your message. Okay, perfect.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're just, I can't wait to meet you in person, really.
Oh, Dana's amazing. You'll love, I mean, we have so many amazing women on here. I'm looking at all the fantastic people on here, but yeah, I've had a lot of conversations with Dana, Tanya.
So exciting. I'm grateful. So I want to share, I'm just looking at the time, and I want to make sure that we get to a few other points. So is the next slide there, be a leader?
Yep.
Great. Got it. Good. I'm with you now, actually. We're on the same page. So one of the things that we talked about all this time that's been underneath, you know, this whole conversation is, you know, because we talked about understanding what is the intention of my presentation. We talked about, you know, understanding the outcome, which kind of led right into that whole what comes first conversation. And it's not even a thought or an emotion. Really what comes first is a result. And ultimately, what you have to understand is that when you're a speaker, you are the leader. And if I ask you, what kind of leader are you? Like, what do you think, what kind of leader are you when you're a speaker?
You're leading them in the direction, and I use the analogy that you are the guide on a bus. I'm leading them to a path in a direction that they sometimes don't even realize they need to go.
Okay, good, good. So ultimately, when you're speaking, because it's the art of speaking, you are what's called a thought leader. So when you're speaking and sharing information, I want you each to know that who you are becoming are thought leaders. And that's why when you look at social media platforms like Twitter or Facebook, people follow you, because the difference between a leader and a follower, right, is, or how you even create a following is by first and foremost being a leader and being a thought leader. And it doesn't necessarily mean having only original thoughts, because you might have, the way that you have original thoughts is by putting a new perspective on an old idea. But what it means to be a leader, really, the difference between a leader and a follower, just like it says there, is that you need to create a vision, which is why we always talk about starting with the result first. Where are you going? What is the direction? Because in order for you to be a leader, you have to know where you're taking your audience. And then what you want to do is, when you're speaking with your audience, is not turn your audience into followers. You actually want to turn your audience into leaders, because when you impart your vision and they're able to embrace this vision, and you're able to really ignite their emotion so that they're passionately engaged in this vision, and then you help them move towards an action plan where they're able to step into this vision and move towards it on their own, they in fact are now leading themselves to the result. And that's when you've really succeeded, because your capacity to talk to people gives them this sense of empowerment that without you, I mean not without you, but under your leadership or with your inspiration, they too can do what you do, which is of course what my intention is here, right, is to give you all of the skills and tools and, inspiration necessary for you to be able to go out there and become the most influential, most inspirational person that you dream of being, right, and share that message with other people. So what do you think about that?
Oh, I'm so excited. I love it. I mean, and that's an amazing point. You talk about having them become a leader and leading themselves in the direction, and I think that's a fabulous way to, really elevate people and get them excited about it. And that's the best way to become a powerful speaker.
Exactly. We become a powerful speaker because we see a new way, and then we share that way with others in a way that really inspires them and engages them and motivates them and, transforms them to be able to pick that up and then become the leaders, so that they can turn to the person next to them and say, let's go. And that's ultimately how you create this powerful following, because if you have the mandate of sharing a message, underneath that message there's a purpose to make a difference. And you cannot do it alone. You really got to do it in a place where everyone is along with you. So how exciting is that? I can't wait. So if you can turn the slide over, we're doing just fantastic. Now many of you are like ready to go. You're just like, okay, now I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to get out there and change the way I'm going to, do things, etc. So do you see on your slide Open Powerfully?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I know it'll show up for me, but at the moment I'm looking at my computer. So here is an acronym called REACT. You want your audience, to react to what you're saying or to respond to what you're saying. Really, the acronym is just to help you remember what your options are, to be honest. But there's 6 specific ways to open up your presentation. Now, we talked about that. Sorry?
No.
Okay, so
go ahead.
Thanks. There's 6 specific ways to open up your presentation, okay? And we talked about, being transparent and letting them know what result you want them to achieve is. That's great. And you can put that in anywhere at all. But when we're talking about like literally opening up, like, hello everyone and welcome, you don't normally get up there and say, hello everyone, the result is I want you to buy my program. You know what I mean? It's a little fast. It's just like dating, It's like you're on your first date. It's like you shake the person's hand and you say, are you my future husband? Are you my future wife? It's a little sudden, right?
You mean that doesn't work?
Exactly. Well, sometimes, and that love at first sight thing. So essentially what I want you to consider is that there's the 6 ways to open powerfully. You can, A, and these are all very self-explanatory. And when we work together, like in an expanded day, then we actually practice a variety of these things to see which one, A, serves your result, communicates your message, has a collection of thoughts that inspires emotions, that brings people to action. I mean, you don't want to just do it. You want to do it with a sense of purpose, right? But you can relate an experience. And I sort of did that at the beginning of my talk tonight, where I talked about being in university, and and that was genuine. Obviously, you want to be always transparent and honest with people, because they have to, in the end, really connect with you. And it's true. It's exactly the way it was. So, or explain via analogy. This is kind of like that. And and what's key about that is, when I spoke earlier about helping your audience connect to your message, and you want to unify them. Oftentimes, you could be speaking to a group of people that have no idea what even the basics of your message is. So, for example, you could be talking about the benefit of health and fitness to a group of engineers, like at work. I mean, the last thing that they're thinking about at work is taking, a stretch break, right? Like, it's just not what their daily thoughts are. So you need to relate what your specific program is in relation to perhaps something that they do currently, or something we've all done before, like brush our teeth, or drive in a car, or just like we were talking about, making a presentation is like being a tour guide on a bus. I mean, honestly, each and every one of us has probably at one point either has experienced it or seen it in a movie. Like, we can all relate, and that's really important, because when you're opening up, you want people to relate in a way where they are listening to you and they say, I get it. I'm in the right spot. This person connects with me. This feels good. You can ask a question. So just like we had that slide, what do you think comes first, an emotion or a thought? Or you could ask a factual question. What do you think is the percentage of men and women and da-da-da? Or what do you think there is more of in the world, bicycles or taxis? Like, something to engage curiosity. People just, oh, this is so interesting. I want to know the answer. You can cite a quote, whether it's inspiring or something that's a bit more presencing, especially if you're doing a ceremonial thing. You can tell a story, or finally you can state a fact. So you know what? What's great about this is that you can have the same talk over and over again, but if you change the opening a little based on your audience, it always feels new. And I want you to be able to remember your options, because when you go out, you really sometimes don't know who your audience is until you feel them out there. And then your intuition will say, you know what, I think this is the time where I'm going to tell them a story. Or your intuition says, you know what, I think these people need an analogy. They have no idea what's going on right now. Or, you know what, I heard a fabulous question this morning on the way, to this presentation on the radio or, in social media. I would like to ask this of my audience. So it gives you the opportunity to be a little bit more spontaneous without having to just sit there in this canned presentation, because that will, A, bore you to death, and B, become a very obvious, disconnect to your audience. How do you feel about that?
That's amazing. I do have a question for you about Ask a Question. So in that sense, you gave some examples of questions where they're looking for an answer to information. What about asking the audience a question in the sense of, how many of you, da-da-da-da-da?
Oh, yeah, perfect. Yep, that's awesome. And, I always tell people, especially when I have a few how many of yous, I always tell them to change hands, because they don't want to build too many muscles on one hand.
I like that. I'm going to have to use it.
Yeah, for sure. Like, you can always just throw a joke in there. And the only thing I'll tell you is that, and we'll go through this when we have our bigger day, but when you ask a question, and if you're going to do this exercise where you're actually going to get your audience, like, I want you to imagine yourself, the audience member. Some speaker gets up there, and you're, excited, whatever, to some degree to see this person, and they've been related to by the person introducing them as someone important, and you're like, okay, I'm willing to, play along. And the speaker says, how many of you are blah, blah, blah? And you actually go through the trouble of taking your very heavy arm and lifting it high in the sky, you know what I mean, and also revealing information about yourself. But the speaker, in the end, does not have a point that actually relates to the how many of you. Like, I've seen speakers do that as an icebreaker, and it doesn't go anywhere, and it doesn't attach to their purpose or persuasion or any of it. I tell you, nothing annoys an audience more than gratuitous exercises. So my only request to you all, if you're going to do it, like, make sure that they get a really good reward for having done that. Or if you're like, and the reward could be simply a preventing them from being bored. So I was just recently at the International Spa Association, and I speak there a lot because my foundation, the foundation of my expertise is in health and beauty. And so I had, hundreds of participants in the room, and I said, just so I can make this relevant for you, please, raise your hand. How many of you have a destination spa where you only have, like seasonal clients? And raise your hand, how many of you have a community-based spa where you have, like monthly and weekly clients? And that helped me understand how I was going to tailor the information. People totally don't mind that because they really want to know you're speaking to them. That's
exactly.
Totally works.
And I think that's a good point, Tanya, and I know you didn't actually say it out, but you kind of gave the example of it, is you want to make sure when you're asking a question like that to make sure you include all of your audience in some way or form.
Right, like the rest of you who didn't raise your hand.
Exactly. But you did that by asking the two level of spas, like, right, the two aspects of it.
Yeah, exactly, so that everyone feels included. Great. You totally get it, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
So should we switch to the next slide?
Absolutely. Close positively. We're on the slide.
Okay. So if you only had 30 seconds left to influence your listener. Now, I actually do have, I don't have an acronym. I should probably make one for the, believe it or not, like if you can open up powerfully 6 different ways, you can actually close positively 9 different ways. And it's important to have, you don't have to have all of them, but if you had 4 good ones, and the reason I say that is because sometimes to close, especially if it's persuasion and you want people to take action, you need to have a variety of closes because you need to help them take the action you want. So for example, if you're a speaker that is trying to raise money for a cause, then you would end with what's called the noble close, right? So you would become this wonderful person if you actually donated, right? Or there's another part of the closing positively that's called for the greater good. You know what I mean? So let's all recycle to keep the world, an ozone-free place, like that kind of thing. And then there's other closes that really drive people to action depending on the result. It's just that they're so long, I couldn't. But so the easiest thing for me to say is this. If you had 30 seconds left to influence your listener, what would you say to get the results you want? And the key to this is, beautiful leaders, is that you always want to say something about them. And you always want to help them leave at least feeling like they've got some sense of leadership in their life.
Oh, that's a great one.
Right.
I love that.
Good. I'm so glad that you're enjoying it. This is so much fun, right? It's awesome.
Yeah, I like that statement. Leave like they feel they have some sort of leadership in their life. That's
right.
Powerful.
Right, exactly. And this is so much like this is like the cooking class I want to give, but there's no dishes in the end, right? It's like the best. But I want you to just all of you, I want you to take a moment to presence yourself to how you feel now that we've had this conversation. So what are some of the emotions that you feel? And you can open up, Carolyn, if you want the phones or however you want to do it, but like what are some of the emotions that you feel now that we've had this far of our talk?
If anyone would like to share, just raise your hand, or you can also send me a question. But if you raise your hand, I can unmute you, and then you can share. Oh, I have a question. Okay, so I'm going to unmute Amani. Amani, did I say that correctly? Hello? Amani's typing away. I've unmuted you. Amani, can you hear me?
I don't, hello?
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, so basically I feel really empowered.
Awesome.
Amazing, I love that. And is there something specific that Tanya said or did tonight that allowed you to feel that way?
I believe it's the way that it's like holding our hands till the end. Normally when you go to do a public speaking or whatnot, you feel so nervous, but she gave like a road map that I will definitely use next time.
Fabulous. Thank you for sharing that. That's so powerful. And I see another one, Dana, of course. So I'm just going to mute you back. If anything else comes up for you, please do share. And Dana, would you like to share with us?
Yeah, this talk has been so great, and the reason, Tanya, I'll say again, is because, oh dear, I'm going to mute that. The reason is that normally when I go to talks, I was talking to Carolyn, and it's I walk away with saying, okay, I get it, but there's usually very few talks I go to in webinars that I put my pen to my paper and say, this is insightful. So really what was so insightful for me, I feel clear on what to do, on my next steps, especially after the part where you're talking about like going towards the results first. I connected with you when you said that, because on stage I'm thinking, what do I want out of my audience? And I also, somebody once quoted to me, and I'll never forget it, is the best kind of leaders are the ones that bring out the leaders in others. And you're really touching upon that throughout your entire presentation. So the emotion I'm walking away with is clarity.
Wonderful.
Right. And what does clarity generate for you? Like what kind of, is that leading to confidence?
Yes, yes. So absolutely, confidence in my talk, because I've actually been venturing out and into speaking right now. I've always wanted to speak, Tanya, and I'm very excited about it. And that's why I connected with Carolyn. And so it's almost like I have the will, but for me to get this presentation and say yes, it definitely makes me feel more confident for my next talk.
Great. I'm so happy to hear it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And what's important for us to understand is this, is that when you're speaking, you're always leading with the law of emotional intelligence, and that is that people remember more how they feel than what you do or say. And so, we've had this time together, and I'm really so honored.
I have one more, Tanya, before you stop. Jody has been trying to get my attention. So, Jody, I put you live. Go ahead.
Please.
Thanks. I just wanted to mention, I am so excited by everything that I've learned tonight. And I know what my end result that I want. But my question is, I'm still not 100% on the words to use in my presentation. Is that just something that you just play with and write down key, powerful words, and it kind of comes from that? Or what do you recommend for that?
Okay, good, really good question. And what is it that you're talking about? Like, what's your topic?
So my end result is having people sign up.
To what?
To the company.
And what company? Give us an example.
Am I allowed to say the company?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay. It's for Avon.
Avon, good.
Yeah. So, and because I'm so passionate about it. I really want to inspire others. I want to mentor these women, but I still don't know what my 30-second commercial would be per se.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you had interrupted this process so that you could actually ask this question. So, Carolyn, if you could present the last slide.
Absolutely. Let me
This is just perfect.
To speak in the benefit.
Right. Okay, so this is such a good question that you asked because, yeah, I have to say that there is an exercise that we can do that draws out the key words. And remember I talked to you before about there's 5 emotional drivers that make people do anything.
Right.
So essentially, though, there's that. But the short of it is, even just for you to walk away with something, is that the key is whatever collection of thoughts you use, you have to speak in the benefit of the listener. So does your statement, or how does your statement solve a problem, answer a need, appeal to a want, make things easier, help people make or save more money, and does it answer so what? And that's the thing, right, is that if you're listening, so there's a guy holding a giant box, right, because, whatever we're presenting to other people is a gift. Like, how is Avon a gift and the answer to this person's life? And that's the key, right? Because oftentimes we do things backwards where, we'll stand up and we'll say, oh, I'm so excited because I really love this particular product, or this company has changed my life because, and, we get into this space of like how much it's really changed something or it offers something, and people are like, so what? And until you actually speak in the benefit of how it will apply to their life. And again, move them to a place of, what is the result? How will this shift things in their life? And we can go through this obviously, more specifically. But what is the so you want them to sign up. So the result is, Jody, you want them to sign up. But that's the result that you want. But you also have to add more of the results. So not only do you want them to sign up, but before that result is you want them, so before they get to that result, what's the result they have to get to?
They need to, I have to find out what their why is. Why would they want to sign up?
Right, so that's early. So essentially, right before they sign up, the result is that they see how this can change their life.
Okay, yeah.
Or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right before that, right before they go, here's my money, or here's my commitment, they need to be able to say, oh my God, I see, and this is key, I see how this can make my life better. And when we speak, in a way that creates a picture and actually gets them to a space of action, and this is like some of you, your talks are not like 5 minutes. Some of you have literally an hour, and I highly recommend that you do an exercise with people if you want them to sort of have a shift in their life in terms of what does their life look like with this or without this. If you can do like a tiny little exercise with them, they can see themselves, my gosh, my life would be so much better if I did this. So they have to kind of lead themselves. You don't want to do all the work with your audience, right? But to answer your question is, I know my result, and I want you all to think about this. Don't just pick the result that you want. Pick the result that they got. Like they feel empowered, they feel excited, they have, the skills and tools, they have the clarity, they have whatever. And then ask yourself, how do I get to that? And so, the collection of thoughts is, so what? And then the emotion is, oh my gosh, that's so exciting, or oh, if I don't do this now, I'm going to be in trouble, or whatever. And then lay out the steps. So many times, honestly, I hear people selling something, and I used to work in a my first work was like I was a skin specialist in a skin therapy clinic, and we would, and I don't know how many of you have ever gone to a salon and people are trying to sell you products or whatever, but they present to you these 2 or 3 things, and you're looking at them like whether it's for your hair, your skin, or whatever. You think, well, this is great, but I have no idea how to use these things. It all seems kind of confusing. And the person's like super passionate about it and really excited, and then they offer you a sale and maybe a gift with purchase if you buy it, and you have no clue. You have no clue how to use it, right? But they want you to buy it, and they thought because they were so passionate and excited that you'd buy it too. And it's the same thing when you're selling Avon. Like you could be showing them 5 different things, but until you basically say, look, tomorrow morning you start with number 1, number 2, number 3, and then you do this and this and this, until they get a clear vision, they don't have leadership, because leadership is about understanding the vision. And when you see, you can confidently move in that direction. But unless you can see, then you're stuck in the unknown, and then you're stuck being a follower, and, like it's just, they can't possibly take action. Do you get what I'm saying?
I do, yes, thank you.
You're awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Jody.
Okay, so I'm going to just thank you all so much, and I want you to leave you with this, law, essentially, right? Because just like we talked about, at the end, like how do you feel, right? It's important for us to consider this, is that whenever you talk, like honestly, in everything I mentioned tonight, I don't know which part of it, like each of you is going to remember a different part of it. Like some of you are actually going to remember the 5 presentation styles, or the fact that there was like, an outcome to each one. Some of you are going to remember the result conversation. Some of you are going to remember, you're going to remember each thing something different. However, the most important thing is that you're going to remember how you felt. And, if you feel like, if your audience feels good and powerful and excited and positive, they're willing to come back for more. But you could have informed them or demonstrated, but if they don't feel that special feeling, then it's hard for them to get into that space of motion to take action and then create more results. And so my call to action for you is that when you go out there, recognize that your talk is not a talk, your conversation is not just a conversation, your presentation is not just a presentation, but beautiful people, you are here to create an experience. And that experience, I wish it for you to be, whatever it is that you want, but I want it to be magical. I want you to go out there and create those magical experiences so that people look at you and think, gee, this person's unforgettable. For some reason or the other, I just feel so connected to them. I want more of them in my life. And that is what will create the spark. And that's what makes you special.
Tanya, thank you. And what a beautiful way to help me segue into the very special offering that you've created for our group. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard Tanya speak. You've heard some of the aspects that she shared with you and how powerful they are and how they've made you feel. Well, she's also done something she's never done before. She has decided to create a one-day event. It's a unique one-day program designed by Tanya just for you to help you develop your message. She's going to develop your unique message and deliver it with power, purpose, and passion. Connect to your professional purpose and speak from the voice of credibility, authenticity, and contribution. Access confidence from the center of your power and speak boldly without engaging from the confrontational ego. Leverage your passion, ignite enthusiasm, and inspire your audience to take action. And this is just a little bit of what's going to be possible for you. There's so much more, because Tanya's ultimate goal is to create experts into speakers, and not just speakers, amazing speakers. So this one-day event is going to occur. We have some information for you here. It's going to be on November 29th, Saturday, November 29th, from 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Holiday Inn Express. Now, what we've done is created a page for you, and we only have 50 spots available, and we have not promoted this event yet. Once we get it out there, once we start promoting it, we know it's going to fill up like crazy, because Tanya charges a lot of money to help people create their talk. But she's done a very unique special just for our group and the people we're going to promote to for $249 for the day. She's never done this before, guys, like never done this. So please take advantage of it. Share it with your friends, because once we hit 50, we're shutting it down. We're going to have 50 people coming to this amazing one-day event. Go to www.supermomentrepreneur.com. You're going to click on events, and then you're going to go to the button that says create your own talk. You can read a little bit more information about what the day is going to be all about, and you can buy your ticket there. We're so excited that Tanya has created this offer for us, and after hearing her speak tonight, I can't wait till November 29th to be present to learn more. I've been vigorously taking notes down, and I've spoken many times as well. My first time was in university, but I'm looking forward to becoming better, more powerful, stronger, more inspirational, and being able to really touch the lives of my audience and every person I speak to, creating an emotional impact and helping them take action to become more powerful leaders in anything they choose to do. So Tanya, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for participating in this webinar. I know how busy you are, especially with the new little one, and we really appreciate your time and your knowledge, and we're looking forward to November 29th.
I'm so excited, and I'm really looking forward to meeting everybody else. And I want to just say this, it's so interesting, because if we replayed this whole entire conversation that we've all had tonight, Carolyn, like the greatest testimony is actually seeing the results. So when we first got on the call, you read the bio, and you read it in a particular way, and your voice had a particular type of energy, and it was just, it was a different type of energy. When you read the offerings for this course and November 29th, etc., the power that you felt all the way through that I'd created, in our conversation that ignited you, you read every single one of those sentences with such an inflection that each and every one, like I wanted to go. You know what I mean? So I want you to know that really, like, in the short time together, it's really exciting for me, obviously, because I want so much to really help other people step into their power and really unlock the magic in their voice, and especially their message. But whenever we're actually able to see it in action, where at the end you read this so powerfully and clearly without any need to reread, it just means that you've now stepped into that place of power. And when we hang up, I'm hoping that each and every one of you will take the energy that you're leaving with tonight and really work on one aspect of your talk. Like, turn on whatever inspiration you've got and do something small. Like, here's your action step. Do something small tonight to reframe your talk so that even if you don't join us, you'll still get the benefit from it. But, if I do get to meet you in person, I'll tell you that, each and every one of you will get a chance to stand up and practice, one aspect of your talk, and you'll be able to create it inside that classroom, because I'll be sending you, a few things in advance to make sure that you're well prepared. But, if you're looking to create the results in your life that are different, it's important to really gain the skills, because as you know, I know because before I got married, I boiled water and I added it to noodles. And since then, I've taken cooking classes, and now my husband, gets decent meals. So it's all just a skill, right? But we've got to learn it together. So I'm really excited to meet you all in person, and I wish you a fabulous, fabulous rest of the week.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Have an amazing night.
Thank you. Take care.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Please have an amazing night and an amazing rest of your week.